So while that's installing, let's talk about databases a little bit. So how familiar are you guys with databases in general? Anybody? Charles?
I mean, I think I made something like that one time.
Okay. Anybody else?
Not as far as like making them, but more like obviously like data input.
Okay.
I work obviously like security for a building. We do the access to cards. We have to create them with, you know, access restrictions and stuff like that for each member.
Right. But you're using some sort of front end, right?
Yeah, the GUI.
All right. So what we're going to be doing right now is basically creating the container, right? The container of a database. And what you're using, right? What you're using to see where the data gets entered is, that's called the front end. And then there's the back end, right? So we'll get to both, but back end, by the way, symbols is usually this one right here. So if you see this symbol, that means it's a database, right? And databases can be broken down into basically four different pieces. The database itself, right, which is can contain many tables and many fields and logic, right? And tables, fields, and logic. So to give you guys an example of what a table looks like is this one, right here, right? We have students and we have classes, right? And databases work on the principle that information is related to one another, right? So a student can have classes, right? It's taking classes, and a class and in classes can have students. So this is it's called a relationship, and there's very different kinds. We're not going to get into that much today. But all you have to know is that in order to connect two tables together, they need to have something in common, right? In this case, that something in common is the student ID. And let me highlight this. Okay, I don't know how to highlight. Great. All right, whatever. So the student ID, there you go, is related to, this is how the two tables are related. And they can do, they can be, they can be any type of information, but you need some reference point. In this case, the student ID, right? So you have a table, right, with the students, Alfonso, Gianfranco, Charles, and Andy, and they're all attending a class, right, which is computer class, right, or computer club. And therefore, now you can relate all of the information. So you can see that a student belongs to a class and that the class contains many students. So naming conventions for databases are pretty much the same type that we were using or we were learning for C++ or Java, right? Where you use camel case. And camel case is pretty useful for databases because you're going to be using all sorts of fields. You start creating, like I'll show you guys one that I made for work. Oops. Okay, all right. And this is something that I designed for my work, right? And if you go to the databases, like I have a bunch of tables, and here I have many fields in one table, right? Different kinds of information, right? It tracks all sorts of different things. And this is the crazy part. This is how everything is related. So this is the power of the database, right? So a client can have projects, can have people, can have buildings, it can have line items, blah, 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 and so on and so on and so on. And so the limit is only your imagination and organizational skills, right? Because in order to keep track of this, you have to be pretty well organized. So And the fields also have their own sets of properties, right? They can be text, they can be dates, they can be numbers, they can be a calculation, they can be all sorts of other types. FileMaker, which is what I'm using, is a very basic database. It's very powerful. It's easy to use, and it's not super complex. So I'm not going to show you guys too much of that because this is not what. But the principles are the same, right? And that's basically right what you need to know about databases. So databases are, you know, the storage and management of data. That's it, right? They're represented by a symbol that looks like this. Usually they have tables, they have fields, and they have logic, right? And like Andy was saying, the logic is the part that you see, is where you actually are able to, like I'll show you again on my database, right? Did I lose it again? Yeah. All right, so there we go.